and she's got a microphone right behind you.
Well, we spoke before, Governor, and thank you very much.
Good to
but I
see
have
you
a
again.
very different question for you this time. I think that the worst possible outcome in the general election would be that if no candidate wins the Electoral College with more than 50%. And we're headed into a possibility where if you get nominated, Trump runs, Kennedy runs, Manchin runs, we may very possibly see the House of Representatives choose our next president. What would you do to prevent that from happening?
Well, first of all, I don't share your pessimism in that regard. There are sore loser rules in over 30 states now in this country who say if you run in the primary, you can't now go after the primary's over and run as an independent. So if I beat Donald Trump in the primary, he ain't running. Or if he's running, he's only running in a few states that he won't be able to make a difference in the election. Second, if I'm the nominee, I can guarantee you Joe Manchin's not running for president. Okay? Not going to happen. Manchin was my mentor when I became governor from the National Governors Association. And we have a very good relationship. And I don't think that Joe Manchin's worried about Chris Christie being president. I think he's made it very clear with what he said. He's worried about Donald Trump being president, and he doesn't have confidence in Joe Biden either. I mean, who knows what Joe Manchin might do if I'm the nominee. Could get real interesting. We could have a little bipartisanship, for God's sake. So I don't share your concern. Here's where that concern really comes into play. If Trump is the nominee, because if Trump is the nominee, I bet you Manchin's going to run. And you could have a situation where nobody gets 270, and then it goes to the House of Representatives. And if you think our country's divided now, imagine when that happens. Those jokers took 3 weeks to pick a speaker. Imagine how long it'll take them to pick a president. And who knows where that'll end up. So I think your concern is right, but I think it's right in the wrong place. I think the way to avoid this is to not give the American people the choice they don't want. 75% of the American people say, we don't want it to be Trump and Biden again. Well, how about we listen to them? And that's our responsibility in our party, not to bang our head against the wall. Look, I want to be really clear about this because my opponents who are left in this race, the real ones that Sununu was alluding to when he was up here, right? Look, this race is now down in the Republican primary to 4 real candidates. Trump, me, Nikki Haley, and Ron DeSantis. I mean, nobody in this room, I think, really thinks Vivek Ramaswamy should be or is going to be president. If the criteria for president was to be the most obnoxious human being you've ever met in your life, he would be a runaway winner. You know how some people say, no, but when you meet him one-on-one about anybody, they're much better. I'm going to tell you, he's not. So that's not true either. There's 4 people left in this race, okay? I'm going to make this really clear because no one else will. Donald Trump is unfit to be president of the United States. He has given away his credibility that he'll serve the American people because all he's done is serve himself. And he's put himself first. Not only, let's get to the end, in the beginning, this guy had a Republican Congress. He said, he promised us he was going to repeal and replace Obamacare. And with the Republican Congress, he didn't. So now we have an even bigger government bureaucracy running health care in this country. Second, he said, and I was there, I was on the stage for 9 of those debates 8 years ago. And he said, we're going to secure our southern border by building a wall across the entire border between the United States and Mexico. And great news, Mexico is going to pay for it. Now, look, I knew that was bull at the time. And I said it at the time. But a majority of people actually believe that garbage. Now, he came back here and said, why would anyone believe I could get a country to pay for a wall on our property? I don't know, because you said it 8,000 times in 2016 and said you were the greatest deal maker of all time and you were the only one who could get it done. Now he's saying we were stupid for believing him. Okay. Then he said, I'm a businessman. I know how to balance budgets. I'm going to balance the budget in 4 years. What did he do in 4 years? He added $7.8 trillion to the national debt, the most any president has added to the national debt in 4 years in the history of the country. So on the merits, he was a failure. And then you get to the end. That's okay. You can applaud for that. He's not here. You don't have to worry about him bursting through the room, all made up and everything, and start screaming, right? No. That'll come later. At the end is when he disqualified himself for the job. Okay? Every president has failures. If I'm president, I'll fail at some things. It's just the way it is. All that should tell you is how much you can believe his promises this time, based on what he didn't do the last time. But you cannot get in this business and decide that the only election that you'll accept is one you win. That the only election that's fair is the one I win. You can't go out behind the seal of the President of the United States in the East Room of the White House on election night and say the election was stolen when you have no evidence to prove it was. And in fact, we sit here now 3 years later and there's still no evidence the election was stolen. You want to know why? Because it wasn't. He lost. And here's the other thing. He knows he lost. I know he knows he lost. But he can't bear the fact that he lost to Joe Biden. I don't blame him. That's a tough loss. I mean, no one had ever lost outside the state of Delaware to Joe Biden ever. And he's the guy who did it. Then he sent this country and so many supporters of his down a road that's led many of them to prison. And more of them are going to go to prison because of what happened on January 6th. And people who worked right around him are now going to prison because he asked them to commit crimes on his behalf. And let me tell you what's going to happen this March. He's going to walk into a courtroom in Washington, D.C., and his own former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, has cut a deal for immunity, and he is going to testify as far away as I am from you. He's going to be from Donald Trump and saying, I committed crimes at his instruction, and he committed crimes right before my eyes. Now, let me ask you something, everybody. If that doesn't disqualify you from being president of the United States, what the hell does? I mean, what's left? We have to do better than that. But in this race, Sununu and I have been the only two people who even mentioned this. You know, I was on stage a week and a half or so ago at the debate in Miami. And I heard Nikki Haley say he was the right president for the right time. And I'd be inclined to pardon him if I were president. Well, let me make something really clear, everybody. I don't think he was the right president at the right time. I voted for him and I was wrong. Okay? And I ain't pardoning him if I'm president of the United States because he doesn't deserve one. You can't have it both ways. You can't say I'm running against the guy and then say he was the right president for the right time. If he was the right president, then why aren't you supporting him? And what will you do when you get there? This is the essence of the problem. People who want to have it both ways. It's hard. You may have seen me go down a couple weeks ago to the Republican Party of Florida to speak at their convention. I got introduced. I went on the stage and started booing right away. I didn't even say anything yet. I usually get booed, but not till I start speaking. Nikki Haley didn't show up. Now, look, you got to be willing to answer these questions. And you got to take a stand. And sometimes it's going to be unpopular. And sometimes you're going to get booed. And if that is too tough for you, how are you going to stand up to Putin? How are you going to stand up to China? How are you going to stand up to the mullahs in Iran? How are you going to do that? If this is too hard, you can be sure as heck that's going to be too hard. So I want to be very clear. He's not qualified to be president. I believe he's going to be a convicted felon, and I'm not talking out of my hat. You all know I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey for 7 years. I ran the 5th largest prosecuting office in this country for 7 years, and you know in New Jersey we have some of the greatest criminals in the world. Our criminals in New Jersey are so great, they make TV shows about them. People love our criminals, and I got to prosecute them. So I know what I'm talking about here. He's going to be convicted, everybody. And if we nominate him, do you think there's anything else Joe Biden and the Democrats are going to talk about from the minute he's convicted until the election happens? And then we're going to wind up with Joe Biden for another 4 years or so, and with Kamala Harris waiting in the wings. Look, they are going to do things that we will not be able to recover from. So this is the moment. And I'm the one who's been willing to stand up to him from the minute I got into this thing, and I will continue. I didn't raise my hand on the stage in the first debate and say, I'll support him even if he's a convicted felon, but everybody else left in this race did. Everybody else left in this race raised their hand. So let's get that one out of the way early in the first question. That's where I stand, that's where I am, and that's where I will always be, and you will never have to doubt it. Next question. Yes, sir, right there.